Okay, this is going to be part 2 of American Babylon. Basically, I went through these articles, starting from where I read about what is the Hegelian dialectic. So I'm going to be going through bits and pieces of each of these articles, covering this. I'm going to put all of this together. Try to put all of this together in hour section videos for this series. The last thing I want to do is bore people, but this information is very important. I didn't want to just kind of spew my own opinions or thoughts or whatever. I want to put out actual vetted fact that people can go look up and find. So I'm sorry if it's really boring. I'm doing my best to try to add commentary to this. A lot of people might even want to listen to it because, you know, I'm not in some nice building or whatever. I'm actually out here in my shed doing this just so I can have quiet. So what I'm going to read over this is from the what is the Hegelian dialectic. This is part of one of the links that was here. It says the mind-changing dialectic process. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read parts of it, but you'll be able to go in and actually read all this stuff because I'm going to post the links in each video on YouTube and on Facebook, so you can go read this yourself. And this is entitled The Power of Dialogue. The century-old plan for socializing the masses gathered momentum when Julian Huxley, brother of Aldous, was chosen to head UNESCO 2 years later. He wrote a book titled UNESCO, Its Purpose and Its Philosophy. This 1947 blueprint for change called for a universal implementation of George Hegel's dialectic process. The task before UNESCO is to help the emergence of a single world culture with its own philosophy and background of ideas, and with its own broad purpose. This is opportune since this is the first time in history that the scaffolding and the mechanisms for world unification have become available, and it is necessary for at moment two opposing philosophies of life confront each other from the west and from the east. You may categorize the two philosophies as two supranationalisms, or as individualism versus collectivism, or as the American versus the Russian way of life, or as capitalism versus communism, or as Christianity versus Marxism. Can these opposites be reconciled? This antithesis be resolved in a higher synthesis? I believe not only that this can happen, but that through the inexorable dialectic of evolution, it must happen. In pursuing this aim, we must eschew dogma, whether it be theological dogma or Marxist dogma. East and West will not agree on the basis of the future if they merely hurl at each other the fixed ideas of the past, for that is what dogmas are. The crystallizations of some dominant system of thought of a particular epoch. A dogma may, of course, crystallize tried and valid experience, but if it be dogma, it does so in a way which is rigid, uncompromising, and intolerant. If we are to achieve progress, we must learn to uncrystallize our dogmas. Today, the Hegelian dialectic has become the cornerstone not only of the global education system, but of quality management in all kinds of governmental, corporate, and private organization around the world. Meanwhile, the training programs, assessment technology, and data tracking systems that complement and monitor the psychosocial process are growing increasingly sophisticated and intrusive. As Julian Huxley declared more than half a century ago, dogma and absolute truth are out. And today's postmodern America shows the effects of that revolutionary ideology. So it should not surprise us that the 5th grade teacher in the Seattle area would use intimidation to twist a student's absolute truth into a personal opinion. She had told her class to complete the sentence, "If I wish for three things, I wish for..." A Christian student, Matt Pecora, wrote, "And infinitely more wishes to meet God, and for all my friends to be Christians." Since each student wishes would be posted on a wall for open house, they had to be just right. Matt's didn't pass. The teacher told him that his last wish could hurt people who didn't share his beliefs. Matt didn't want to hurt anyone, so he agreed to add, "if they want to be." He had to complete another sentence, which began, "If I could meet anyone I would like to meet," Matt wrote, "God, because He is the one who made us." The teacher told him to add, "in my opinion." When Matt's parents visited the school, they noticed the corrections. "Why did you add this?" his mother asked. "The teacher didn't want me to hurt anyone's feelings, but these are just your wishes." "I thought so." Matt looked confused. Later, the teacher explained to Matt's parents that she wanted diversity in her class and was looking out for her other students. But why couldn't Matt share his views? "I try to instill God's truths in my son," said Matt's father, "but it seems like the school wants to remove them." He is right. Both absolute truth and contrary facts clash with the mindset needed for the global management systems. The planned oneness demands new thinking, new strategies, new behavior, and new beliefs that turn God's word and values upside down. Facilitated group discussion is the key to the transformation, and UNESCO's plan for lifelong learning calls for universal participation. Young and old everywhere must be trained to think and work collectively. Professor Benjamin Bloom, called the father of outcome-based education, summarized it well. "The purpose of education and the schools is to change the thoughts, feelings, and actions of students. A large part of what we call good teaching is the teacher's ability to attain effective objectives through challenging the students' fixed beliefs and getting them to discuss issues." Since Matt's last comment exposed the fixed beliefs, the teacher challenged it. Absolute truths such as "God made us" can't be modified or synthesized to please the group. Those who take a firm position on truth or facts will resist, compromise, and offend the group. The mind-changing Hegelian dialectic process required students in communist nations to confess their thoughts and feelings in their respective groups. Trained facilitator teachers would then guide the group dialogue toward a pre-planned consensus. The original thesis and antithesis, opposing views such as Christianity versus Marxism, would be merged or synthesized into the ever-evolving higher truths. Huxley believed the same process, the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis of Hegelian philosophy, would mold global citizens committed to the oneness of all. Though the Marxist reconciliation of opposites conflicts would cease and a new manageable world would rise from the ashes of the old. Okay, I stopped there because everyone's seen this who's been paying attention. Anyone that's been seeing all this news about how, a woman got fired, she worked at a bank, and she always said, "Have a blessed day," or "Bless you," right? She gets fired. A kid wants to say thanks to God at his graduation, in his graduation speech. They tell him not to do it. He does it anyway. Do you see how this is what I'm talking about here? How about Common Core? How many of you parents actually looked this stuff up and saw what is actually going on with this? Have you seen what their math problems are? How difficult they are? That takes the brain and slows it down. There's so many steps, even when they do, subtraction or adding There's like so many steps. There's like 20 different steps just to solve something that's easily solved. This is their way of slowing the brain down. Okay? Common Core is absolutely horrible. Anyone that doesn't know that by now, I mean, parents should be screaming from the rooftops about this. I mean, I'm still concerned about it. My kids are homeschooled because of this. That's not the only reason why they're homeschooled, but, you know, it's a big part of it. And just from reading this, I mean, this is documented. Okay? These people who are controlling all of this are admitting what they're doing. So you can't call me crazy, and you can't call me a tinfoil hat wearer, because it's right here in black and white. And I'm going to post this information for you. So unless you're a communist, and you don't believe in the Constitution, and you don't believe you should have rights, anybody that reads this stuff and looks into it all, they should be pissed, and they should be speaking out about it. I'm going to continue to read this. It pisses me off, and I don't like having to read it. But, you know, a lot of people don't want to look this stuff up. So I'm going to do it. Instead of giving you my opinion, I'm going to give you facts. I sit here and I tell you these people write about what they're doing in their writings. I've said this several times in my other videos. So now I'm going to sit here and read it to you. I want you guys to wake up. I want you to see what's going on. Okay? And we need to do something about it. Because we're losing our country, we're losing our sovereignty, we're losing our rights. So I'm going to read on now. Okay. This revolutionary program was officially incorporated into American education in 1985, when President Reagan and Soviet President Gorbachev signed the US-USSR Education Exchange Agreement. It put American technology into the hands of communist strategists and sanctioned our use of their psychosocial strategies, including the mass media. Julian Huxley suggested back in 1947, the techniques of persuasion and information and true propaganda must be deliberately used, as Lenin envisaged to overcome the resistance of millions to desirable change. Today, a more sophisticated version of this brainwashing process drives the social transformation. Governments, schools, businesses, and service organizations, get this, even churches, are using it to mold compliant citizens and group thinkers. It usually serves their purpose, for it helps root out individualism and the intolerant attitudes that could bring conflict and division. When bonded to the group and trained in the new relational rules, few dare offend the majority by taking a contrary stand. See? This is the old thing that they use called peer pressure. So even if you are offended by it or you see it going on, you don't say anything. Why? Because, oh, I don't want to offend my friend. I don't want to offend my neighbor, so I'll give up all my rights. No. If you are pissed off, you need to say, I am pissed off. You do not need to shut down your instincts. You do not need to say, that's why I say, oh, you're mad? Here, take this pill. It will help you. And then 2 years later, your friend commits suicide because they're on these crazy ass pills. Alright? They're killing people. I don't know. I've had 2 friends die from these freaking pills. 2. They didn't commit suicide, but it ruined their bodies, killed their organs. And remember what I read to you in this last video of what this guy said? It was H.G. Wells. Remember what he said? People would be killed by what? opiates. I'm starting to get a little pissed. I'm sorry. I know I was a little bit more professional in my first video, but I have to stop and I have to put commentary in on this, because I just don't understand how people do not just see this going on in our society and are not standing up and saying anything about it. Sorry, I will do it to my last breath. I don't give a shit. I really don't. I'm not going to give up my liberties and my freedoms and my children's liberties and freedoms just so I can make my neighbor happy or my mother happy or my family happy. My kids they're the most important thing in the world to me, and my family. Sorry. End of story. I'm not going to just sit there and be some fake ass person and just like let my country burn and lose everything that we fought so hard for just because I want to be popular. Sorry, not going to happen. Okay, now that I'm done ranting, I'm going to read more, which I'm probably going to get more pissed off, but I'm going to continue to read and smoke my cigarette. Because I have the right to do that, so. It may not be good for me, but I'm doing it. Okay. We have moved into a new era, said Dr. Shirley McCune, keynote speaker at the 1989 Governor's Conference on Education. What we are facing is total reconstructing of society. We no longer are teaching facts to children. The former senior director of the Mid-Continent Regional Educational Laboratory knew well that facts, what she calls little fixed beliefs, anchor the mind in certain absolutes which block the dialectic process. So, being independent, being who you are, being special, being what God made you to be. Everyone, I don't care where they're from. God created us in His way. Each person is special. You are an individual, right? They don't want you to be an individual. Like I said in my first video about the Hegelian dialectic, where the people that lived in the society could only see in black and white. They had no feelings. They weren't allowed to. They had to take their injection every morning to shut off their feelings. Propaganda, institutional pressures, and financial incentives pull parents and other adults into the process as well. The masses must learn to feel that traditional values are an intolerable threat to peace. So if your child in school happens to have a Pop-Tart for breakfast and eats it and it comes out in the shape of a gun, oh no, it's intolerable, we can't handle that, no. Okay, and yes, that did happen, and I can pull that up too if you want me to. Let's see what else, let's see. And Christians must be willing to trade their God-given absolutes for Huxley's view of evolving truths and collective thinking. But God says, do not be conformed to this world. Therefore, we make it our aim to obey God rather than man. Though the world demands consensus, we take our stand on the unchanging, eternal Word of God. Romans chapter 12, verse 2, Acts chapter 5, verse 29. Now, I'm done with this section. I'm going to pause, okay, and we'll go into the next one. Okay, now we're going to talk about, this is entitled in the section, The Dialectical Imagination, A History of the Frankfurt School and the Institute of Social Research, 1923 through 1950. University of California Press, 1973. And there's a note at the beginning. It says, the last section focuses on authoritarianism, an obstruction to the dialectical process. In fact, the goal of this process is to eliminate traditional authorities such as the father, the pastor, and the Bible. Christians are being attacked every day. We hear about it, don't we? These represent intolerable absolutes. A father's no, a pastor's thou shalt not, and the Bible's unchanging guidelines. The masses must be freed from such authorities and, instead, learn to follow their own inner guidance. But that inner guide must be shaped by trained facilitators, and the dialectic process, it must be taught through praxis, Praxis, to submit to an ever-evolving group consensus. Loosely defined, praxis was used to designate a kind of self-creating action which differed from the externally motivated behavior produced by forces outside man's control. In fact, one of the earmarks of praxis, as opposed to mere action, was its being informed by theoretical considerations. The goal of a revolutionary activity was understood as the unifying of theory and praxis, which would be in direct contrast to the situation prevailing under capitalism. The Frankfurt School was to become a major force in the revitalization of Western European Marxism in the post-war years. In addition, through the sudden popularity of Herbert Marcuse in America of the late 1960s, the Frankfurt School's critical theory has also had a significant influence on the New Left in this country. Grunberg concluded his opening address by clearly stating his personal allegiance to Marxism. As a scientific methodology, Marxism would be the ruling principle at the Institute. True Marxism, he continued, was not dogmatic. It did not seek eternal laws. With this latter assertion, critical theory, as it was later developed, was in agreement. With the introduction of psychoanalysis to the Institute, the Grunberg era was clearly over. The change this symbolized was given further impetus by the acceptance of a new member in the late 1932, Herbert Marcuse, who was to become one of the principal architects of critical theory. Marcuse was born in 1898 in Berlin into a family of prosperous, assimilated Jews. Like most of the others, in 1919, he quit the Social Democratic Party in protest against its betrayal of the proletariat. With the Nazis' assumption of power of January 30th, 1933, the future of an avowedly Marxist organization staffed almost exclusively by men of Jewish descent, at least by Nazi standards, was obviously bleak. Adorno spent most of the next 4 years in England, staying at Merton College, Oxford. Once in America, the Institute members became more sensitive to the Jewish question. One important similarity between certain strains in the Jewish cultural tradition and in that of German idealism, which is especially crucial for an understanding of critical theory. In the old Kabbalistic idea that speech rather than pictures was the only way to approach God, this, so Habermas has argued, parallels the idealistic critique of empirical reality, which reached its height in Hegelian dialectics. After the Institute's resettlement at Columbia University, however, this tone underwent a subtle shift in a pessimistic direction. Articles in the Zeitschrift scrupulously avoided using words like Marxism or communism. I wonder why. Substituting dialectical materialism or the materialist theory of society. Instead, these changes were doubtless due in part to the sensitive situation in which the Institute's members found themselves at Columbia. They were also a reflection of their fundamental aversion to the type of Marxism that the Institute equated with the orthodoxy of the Soviet camp. But in addition, They expressed a growing loss of that basic confidence which Marxists had traditionally felt in the revolutionary potential of the proletariat. Although attacking the idea of a group or mass soul, Fromm felt that individuals were clearly entirely isolated from their social developed party in response to the failure of traditional Marxism to explain the reluctance of the proletariat to fulfill its historical role. And moving westward to California, Horkheimer and Adorno gave symbolic confirmation of the Frankfurt Institute's increased distance from its European origins. In February of 1940, while still in New York, Horkheimer, Pollock, Marcuse, and Lowenthal had taken out naturalization papers. In the 40s, the studies in prejudice picked up, but now the focus was on American forms of authoritarianism. Authoritarianism in America appeared in different guises from its European counterparts. Instead of terror or coercion, more gently forms of enforced conformism had been developed. Perhaps the most effective of these were to be found in the cultural field. American mass culture thus became one of the central concerns of the Frankfurt School in the 40s. In the next chapter, we shall turn to the extensive and penetrating work of Adorno and Benjamin in the context of the Institute's treatment of formative culture. The principle that Adorno attributed to the symbols also informed their work. Defiance of society includes defiance of its language. Adorno himself indicated his purpose indirectly when he wrote of Skorborg's music. It requires the listener spontaneously to compose its inner movement and demand of him not mere contemplation but praxis. Benjamin strove to give his words a richness and resonance that normal prose lacked. His interest in the Talmud and the Kabbalah may have led him taught the conviction that multiple levels of meaning exist in every sentence. Benjamin's keenest interest was in the Kabbalah, the most arcane of Jewish mystical works. If Benjamin responded to the revelatory elements in Judaism, he was equally sensitive to its redemptive, not biblical redemption strains. The messianic current in Jewish through which was appropriated in the secularized by Marxism ran through his writings from beginning to end. One of the last essays he wrote made this evident. It was here that Benjamin most clearly articulated his distinction between homogeneous empty time and the messianic jetzit, the fulfilled time of the present that the revolution was supposed to usher in. Okay, in this section it's Brainwashing in America, Why Few Call It Conspiracy by Bert Kjos, 2001. Information is useful only if citizens can put it into the framework of knowledge and use it to solve problems, form values, and make choices. Education for sustainability will help them make individual and collective decisions that both benefit themselves and promote the development of sustainable communities. Must involve everyone. President Clinton's Council on Sustainable Development. Here we are talking about Agenda 21 again. Okay, but it's also called Sustainable Development. Absolute behavior control is imminent. The critical point of behavior control, in effect, is sneaking up on mankind without his self-conscious realization that a crisis is at hand. Man will never self-consciously know that it has happened. Raymond Hutton. To Nurture Humanness, ASCD, Curriculum Arma of the NEA, 1970. The Protestant ethic will atrophy or more and more enjoy varied leisure and guaranteed sustenance. Most people will tend to be hedonistic. Behavioral Science Teacher Education Program, B-Step, Department of Health and Education and Welfare, 1969. We were trained in all phases of warfare, both psychological and physical, for the destruction of the capitalistic society and Christian civilization. In one portion of our studies, we went thoroughly into the matter of psychopolitics. This was the art of capturing the minds of a nation through brainwashing and fake mental health. During the past few years, I have noted with horror the increase of psycho-political warfare upon the American public. Kenneth Goff, member of the U.S. Communist Party from 1936 to 1939. Brainwashing is not, and some anti-Christian educators and students contend, the biblical process of training our children to love and follow God. The word brainwashing refers to a planned, step-by-step attempt to wash family-taught beliefs from the minds of those who oppose government ideology in America. It would mean replacing the old biblical values and worldview with a new way of thinking that would support a totalitarian agenda. In other words, every child must be a peace child, a willing and active servant of the New World Order. A mass worldwide partnership is pioneering new strategies for social transformation. The media, the entertainment industry, computer companies, government agencies, educational institutions, the United Nations, and its accredited non-governmental organizations, NGOs, have all joined together in a common quest toward a global mind change. They seek solidarity, a worldwide unity based on a new set of beliefs and values, obsolete and exclusive loyalties to national sovereignty, biblical values, and the unadulterated U.S. Constitution stand in their way. Conforming the masses to their way of thinking requires all the sophisticated tools and tactics developed at the various behavioral science research institutes and education laboratories, established first in England, then in the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, and finally in the United States. If these psychosocial engineers win their battle against an unsuspecting public, they would wash away individual thinking, free speech, and all other rights that have made America unique. The vacuum would be filled with lofty ideals, enticing images, and deceptive promises designed to mold minds that match their global vision. Group thinking and other controls and incentives would enforce compliance. See Mind Control and the UN Plan for Your Mental Health. There's links here. It may look a little different here. It's because my video cut off. So I'm going to go back to where we were and read this section again. This is on the section on brainwashing. Bombard children with mind-changing suggestions. A familiar tale told to first graders in Pennsylvania illustrates both tactics and the planned transformation of the world. We all know the story of the little red hen who wanted some bread to eat. She asked some from her barnyard friends to help make it, but the cat, the dog, and the goat all said no. Finally, she did all the work herself, yet when the bread was done and its fragrance spread throughout the barn, her unwilling neighbors were more than willing to help her eat it. "Won't you share with us?" they begged. "No," she answered. "Since you didn't help, you don't get anything." In the context of traditional values, the moral of the story is, you get what you work for. But those who have learned to think and see from the new global perspective are led to different conclusions. Listen to the kinds of questions the first grade teacher asked her class. Why was the little red hen so stingy? Isn't it only right that everyone gets to eat? Why wouldn't she share what she had with some who had none? The concerned mother who heard and reported this story asked, what kinds of values were the children taught? The new interpretation emphasizes love and sharing, but what is missing? How might it confuse a child's values? The answers are obvious. The children are taught socialist values. The new interpretation vilified values that have motivated Americans to be vigilant, responsible, and fair. The teacher's questions were actually strategic questions promoting the group to ridicule traditional values, to see reality and society from a new, politically correct perspective, and to intimidate and shame anyone who dared to disagree. A new mental framework is vital to the paradigm shift. See see chart. Well, actually, it has a link here you can go to see the chart. But to launch the new system, the old patterns must be blurred and broken. The educational establishment knows that children who are fed a daily diet of biblical truth will resist their plans for change. They also know that students bombarded with strategic suggestions and idealized pagan images will probably reject Christianity. If schools can build the right kind of framework or filter in the minds of children early enough, the new global beliefs will fit right in. In other words, the battle for the hearts and minds of America's children will be won by the side that first trains children to see reality from its point of view. This paradigm shift was no mystery to Aldous Huxley, author of A Brave New World. He wrote that education must provide a mental framework within which any piece of information acquired in later life may find its proper and significant place. In the old days, that mental framework was the biblical worldview, but Huxley, like most of today's agents, called for a new age global framework. Like a filter, it blocks facts and ideas that don't fit, but welcomes input that strengthens the framework, especially when communicated through stories and images that stir the imagination and arouse strong feelings. Focus, this is entitled, Focus on Feelings, Not Facts. The shift from factual education to feeling and experience-based learning began over 70 years ago. Through the decades, the strategies used to manipulate minds in the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were developed. First at the Tavistock Clinic near London and later at Germany's Frankfurt School. Originally called Frankfurt Institute of Social Research, their mind-bending methods soon spread to a rising number of psychosocial research centers in America. They were fine-tuned at Columbia, Harvard, Stanford, and other American universities at preparation for this return to a communist system. See Ellen Stark's Re-Education. There's another link here. Bob Buford, former head of the Drucker Foundation for Nonprofit Management and the founder of Leadership Network, also taught the new Christian leadership methods at the Aspen Institute. More recently, at the 1989 Governor's Conference on Education in Kansas, Dr. Shirley McCune, the head of the Mid-Continent Regional Educational Laboratory, summarized the policy in her keynote speech. The revolution in curriculum is that we no longer are teaching facts to children. We no longer see the teaching of facts and information as the primary outcome of education. What will take the place of logic, fact, and analysis in the coming age? This rhetorical question was raised by Dr. Donald A. Cowan, President Emeritus of the University of Dallas. His revealing answer exposes an important step toward the new consensus. The central way of thought for this new era will be imagination. Imagination will be the active, creative agent of culture, transforming brute materials to a higher, more knowable state. It is easy to see why visionary change agents would prefer to inspire the imagination rather than teach facts and logic. Unlike facts and convictions, the imagination can easily be manipulated. Today's popular books, games, and other forms of entertainment bring all kinds of suggestions and images that confuse the old ways of thinking and promote the new values. They twist facts, turn right and wrong upside down, stir the imagination with unthinkable suggestions, redefine words, and give new meanings to old images, such as the little red hen. See Establishing a Global Spirituality. This is another link it gives. Eventually, most students become conditioned to see everything through the new politically correct mental filter. The sight of an old social symbol, i.e. flag, or the sound of a word they have learned to hate, pastor, evil, capitalism, etc., can now trigger emotional reactions that cannot be resolved with facts and logic. Now we understand why those of us that come with facts and information that is true. This is the reason why we get that emotional reaction from what we call liberals or sheep or Kool-Aid drinkers, whatever label you want to put on them. This is the reason why they have such a strong reaction to you when you post facts. Okay, for those of you who go into that category, I'm not trying to insult you. You need to know that your brain, through these programs and these people, have conditioned you to react that way. So instinctually, I can't say that word, but anyways, emotionally, what you would normally do, okay, your normal reaction from yourself is not coming out. The product of your conditioning is coming out, and it's right here in black and white. They are saying what they've done and what they are doing. So when those of us try to tell you that you've been conditioned and brainwashed, you have. And there's proof of it because these people admit they're doing it. Now I'm going to pause and then we'll go into more of this when I come back. Now in this section, it gives an example of this process. A simple example of this process was exposed by a Christian teacher in Sunnyvale, California during a public elementary school assembly. The students sang the words of the Peacemaker's planetary anthem to the tune of the Star-Spangled Banner. This melody, which has symbolized freedom to those who have loved America, now became a tactical trigger used to turn hearts from the old ways to the new vision. And this is what it says. Oh, say can you see by the one light in all, a new age to embrace at the call of the nations, where our children can play in a world without war, where we stand hand in hand in the grace of creation, where the rivers run clean through forests pristine. Inspiring, isn't it? The mental images behind those words illustrate the visioning part of the outcome-based education. Now this is another link it gives you, or OBE, as well as total quality management, TQM. This is another link it gives you. Both use the consensus process, another link, to create the collective consciousness needed for the new communities and social organizations. In the classroom, this process of change often begins with planned visions. The plant vivid but unrealistic goals into children's minds and emotions. Next, students must learn to visualize scary images of the current crisis. The crisis is vital to the process. It provides a justification for environmental activism, government control, and unthinkable changes. So, in stark contrast to the lofty ideal in the song above, the students must learn to feel the pain of a dying earth, abused by the ruling generation. The colorful classroom manual on global change, Rescue Mission Planet Earth, this is another link they give you, fits the bill. It is full of scary, sensational pictures and misguided children's opinions that fire the imagination and fuel anger. Trained teacher facilitators turn this anger toward parents and grandparents who must bear the blame for destroying our planet. This is important because, as in totalitarian countries around the world, children must learn to submit to state-defined values and loyalties, not their parents' or traditional values. In Rescue Mission Planet Earth, page after page of pseudoscience and twisted facts prepare the reader to follow the call to political action on behalf of the United Nations and Planet Earth. Unless they know the facts, children and their teachers will have little resistance to the heartbreaking images of dying trees, starving children, abused women, an overcrowded planet drowning in pollution and rising oceans. As Al Gore wrote in in the balance, I strongly urge the establishment of the mission to planet Earth, a worldwide monitoring system staffed by children, designed to rescue the global environment. Who else have we known in history who involves the children? It's all part of the plan. Create and or publicize a crisis, vilify the enemy of the people, then market the pre-planned global solution to the world, starting with children. As in the former Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, the school becomes a boot camp for an army of angry and self-righteous rescuers, ready to argue using their feelings, not facts, against anything that opposes their new and narrow idealism. See third point in Paradigm Shift, which it gives you a link here. Rescue Mission Planet Earth is nothing less than the children's vision of the United Nations Agenda 21, which gives you a link here. It is also, as I said before, titled Sustainable Development. Sponsored by UNESCO, we've already went over UNESCO, and other UN agencies, and promoted by the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And another link, see Local Agenda 21. The propaganda-filled children's book helps create the needed gap between inspiring visions and perceived crisis scary enough to evoke strong feelings, change values, and motivate children to government-led social action. We have to reorient education so that we turn our planetary careers, explained David R. Wolcombe, president of Peace Child International and head of the Rescue Mission Planet Earth project. He also serves as a consultant to the Global Vision Corporation as a massive international NGO, non-government organization, accredited to the UN Commission on Sustainable Development, behind the backs of parents around the world. It works to transform the goals, the methods, the leaders, and the process of education. And that, continued Mr. Wolcombe, requires, as Agenda 21 said, a reorientation of education towards sustainable development. It's a revolution we're taking about here. It's going to require new materials. It's going to require much greater involvement by young people themselves in their own teaching and education, because actually adults don't know as much and don't care as much about the environment as many young people do. And it's going to require a much better sort of facultative education where teacher and students together are on this exploratory journey about how you can square the circle between economic growth and prosperity. Before you dismiss Global Vision's power and influence, consider a few of its partners and sponsors. They include UN agencies such as the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, really? A population fund. The World Health Organization, WHO, the UN Center for Human Settlements, and the UN Center for Human Rights. It also includes numerous foundations, environmental groups, educational institutions, and media and corporate giants such as the European Broadcasting Union, EBU, Princeton University Center of International Studies, Columbia University Department of Religion, Mystic Fire Video, Apple Computer, Sun Microsystems, the Image Bank, Bell Labs, Robert Mueller, Noel Brown, Federico Mayer, Nafis Sadiq, Maurice and Han Strong. See World Heritage Protection. This is another link they give you. Gro Harlem Brundtland, head of the World Health Organization, the Dalai Lama, the movie Mongols, Bernardo Bertolucci, and Martin Scorsese all have joined their talents and resources in a common pursuit of global consciousness envisioned by the United Nations.
Aldous Huxley, author of Brave New World and brother of Julian Huxley, gave a speech at Berkeley in 1962, shortly before his death. He admitted that his best-selling book, Brave New World, written in 1932, was based not on fiction, but on what the elite were actually planning to implement.
And here I would like briefly to compare the parable of Brave New World with another parable which was put forth more recently in George Orwell's book 1984. I'm inclined to think that the scientific dictatorships of the future, and I think there are going to be scientific dictatorships in many parts of the world, will be probably a good deal nearer to the Brave New World pattern than to the 1984 pattern. They will be a good deal nearer, not because of any humanitarian qualms in the scientific dictators, but simply because the Brave New World pattern is probably a good deal more efficient than the other. But if you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, the state of servitude, the state of being, well, it seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude. People can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which, by any decent standard, they ought not to enjoy. And these methods, I think, are a real refinement on the older methods of terror, because they combine methods of terror with methods of acceptance. But then there are various other methods which one can think of. There is, for example, the pharmacological method. This was one of the things I talked about in Brave New World. And the result would be that, I mean, you can imagine a euphoric which would make people thoroughly happy even in the most abominable circumstances. I mean, these things are possible.
A serious delusion. Photographs about which you've had hallucinations, which you believed you held in your hand. They never existed. Say what you're about to say, Winston.
They exist in memory. I remember. You remember.
I do not remember. Only the disciplined mind can see reality, Winston. It needs an act of self-destruction, an effort of the will. Do you remember writing in your diary, freedom is the freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4?
Yes.
How many fingers am I holding up, Winston?
4.
And if the party says there are not 4, but 5, then how many?
5.
No. That's no use. You're lying. How many fingers, please?
4. What else can I say? 5, 4. Anything you like. Only please stop it. Stop the pain. How can I help it? How can I help what I see under my eyes? 2 and 2 makes 4.
Sometimes, Winston. Sometimes they're 5. Sometimes they're 3. Sometimes they're all of them at once. exists in its own right, Winston. Reality is in the human mind, not in the individual mind, which makes mistakes and soon perishes, but in the mind of the party, which is collective and immortal. Again?
No.
How many fingers, Winston?
4. 4. I suppose there are 4. I tried to see 5. I wish I could.
Which do you wish? To persuade me that you can see 5, or really to see them?
Really to see them.
Again? How many, Winston?
I don't know. I don't know.
Better.
But he left one final warning.
1984 is, I believe, a quite terrifying masterpiece. So terrifying, in fact, I don't think I should like to read another like it.
I am not absolutely dissatisfied with it. I think it is a good idea, but the execution would have been better if I had not been under the influence of TB when I wrote it.
You once claimed that you have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you've demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.